This meeting is being recorded.
Hey, Eric, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hi, Nicole.
Hey, thank you so much for your patience. I
Absolutely.
have a question for you before we get started.
Yes.
I do have a note taker and the ability to record, and I can give these things to you. Um, I just want to make sure that technologically that we're working within what you need. So I'm gonna, and then also I just need to make sure, obviously, that I'll be quiet and off screen.
Okay.
But do you have any, needs on this side? I just want to make sure that we're thinking through those things.
No, I'm all good. I have everything set up on my end. So
Okay,
yeah, we're all
then
good.
I am going. Okay, perfect. Give me 1 second. I do have this note taker. This is also um I guess approve. I think Leah's note taker wants to be here. Welcome, Leah, I guess. She's my assistant. So give me 1 second
All right.
and then I'll hop off. Also, Eric, too, as you can imagine, this whole situation kind of falls under, let me give you the correct terminology. Um, it's a private matter that's absolutely been exploited. So, as you
Mm,
can imagine, there will be certain questions because of the legal implications that Ammon's obviously just going to say, obviously I can't comment on that because there is an active private legal matter here. So if that's okay with you, I
yeah,
just want to make sure that you kind of understand, and I'm
absolutely.
sure you do, but
I totally
yeah.
get it.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so okay, give me 1 second to move some of these things out so that you don't see my screen.
All right.
Hold on. Or does it matter?
It
Does it
actually doesn't
matter?
matter. We're good.
Oh, okay. Then I don't need to overthink. So obviously here is Ammon, the CEO of BAM, and Eric, I will let you take the floor.
Great. All right. Well, thanks for taking some time to talk with me. I know things are very crazy right now. I can only imagine. It's kind of here at the top. I just kind of want to say, just to make you more comfortable, I'm not a gotcha journalist. I'm not gonna come out with a real zinger of a question. I have training as journalism before I was doing this Lego podcast. My goal is just I want to tell the truth. I want people to know what's actually going on. There's a lot of different stories around right now. So yeah,
Yep.
I'm just gonna stick to the truth as far as I know it. If it's something I don't know to be true, I'll attribute it. And yeah, I just kind of ask that you do the same, and this should hopefully be smooth sailing.
Sure. Yeah. Sounds great.
So I guess my first question is I kind of want to understand the relationship between Bricks and Minifigs as a franchisor versus a franchisee. What does that relationship look like?
Sure. Franchising can be described as an interdependent
Mm,
business relationship. So a franchisor has a concept or an idea that then they test or otherwise, like get off the ground. And then once they see that it works, they then start allowing other business owners to follow the same model, but with their own business.
mm,
So, like McDonald's, which is like one of the most recognizable brands that's out there, their franchisees are independent business owners who have their own LLC, who have their own, you know, often depending on how big they are, they have their own accounting teams, they have their own marketing teams, they have lots of things in that capacity.
yeah.
Um, but the rules they have to follow and the operations they have to follow for their front of house business side of things
Mm,
is dictated by the franchisor who built the system and whose brand they're using. So there's kind of this interdependency between the two parties. And people tend to go with franchising because the model has already been proven. They're not taking a stab in the dark and hoping and praying that they're going to um, continue to move forward, but that they are given an opportunity to determine whether or not they're going to be a good business owner
yeah.
with a lot less risk than somebody who is striking out on their own.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, Bricks and Minifigs, obviously, the amount of stores has really exploded in the last couple of years. Kind of speak to that. How did that happen? Was there a catalyst?
There have always been passionate individuals
Yeah.
seeking to be franchisees. Our capacity was improved as we continue to make adjustments. So interestingly enough, my brother and I, we were franchisees of Bricks and Minifigs first.
Yeah.
So we were originally franchisees. We had our own franchise location. And then, based on just some changes at leadership and some other things, the franchisor reached out to us because of our previous business experience and asked, "Hey, would you be interested in taking on the franchise organization?" And so we decided to do so and took off with that. But there was quite a bit of cleanup that needed to be done when it came to reports and understanding various elements of why they were doing things one way versus another. And so it took us a couple of years to really get the foundation prepped for a larger influx of new stores. And then we brought on the right people that helped us not only with helping the system be very clean and clear, how people can get involved in the franchise, and that process that we developed and the foundation that we had established really springboarded this large influx of franchisees.
Yeah. And how many stores do you have right now?
So I think it's right around 250 stores that are open,
Yeah.
and another like 70 or so that are waiting for their open.
Yeah. Wow. That's great. And what has been the public response to all these new Bricks and Minifigs stores?
It's been overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah.
Each franchisee, when they are introduced, looked at, understood, and we've improved as we've gone along. But each one kind of goes through a vetting process, and not everybody's going to be perfect, and not everyone's going to always work out the way we think they're going to. But we have a vetting process, and a big part of that is looking for people who are willing and capable of connecting to their communities. Because we believe so very much that the community portion of Bricks and Minifigs is really what makes Bricks and Minifigs special.
Yeah.
And so we really try to foster that. And so we feel that the communities across the nation have embraced the Bricks and Minifigs locations when they get in. So
yeah. So let's talk about the Reckless Bid video. It came out about a week ago. Did you know this was coming?
We knew that some content had been filmed. We didn't know the extent of what was going to be done with it, or like how it was going to be used. But we knew most likely that something would happen, though there were other legal things happening at the time that made us feel that maybe there had been some second thoughts.
Yeah, yeah. And what was sort of the initial reaction to the video, at least in your neck of the woods?
Sure. Very, I guess, upset is probably the best word. We have franchisees everywhere, myself, included as part of those that are upset at the misinformation. You talked about not being a gotcha journalist, but the mischaracterizations and the way that they are edited to make them look has not been fair to anybody that was party to the video.
Can you, because you're in the video a couple of times, can you at least speak to your own experience with the misinformation?
Yeah. I mean, my clip in the video is just that. It's a very, very small clip compared to the amount of time that I had spent trying to reason with and talk to the individuals that had come to harass our staff at the corporate location. And after just going around in circles for probably 30 to 40 minutes and just, having kind of less than genuine questions or less than genuine responses being given to me, I was exasperated by the end of it. And that's, when people get tired and exasperated, that's when we finally got the footage that we can use to make him look like a completely unreasonable monster, but that's what they do is people whose goal is to do those types of things, they just harass and go after people as long and hard as they can until somebody breaks and says something that, then they can, use that one clip to be like, oh, look at this horrible monster of a person. So that's what I feel like has kind of really happened here.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of public outcry to individual stores that really have nothing to do with this other than they have bricks and minifigs in the name.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of people are upset. We could argue if that's valid or not, but I think we could both agree people are upset.
Yep.
Is there a place they could go to express that frustration that isn't, the Bricks and Minifigs Facebook page in Nashville, Tennessee? Do you have like a channel for them?
A place for them to express their frustration.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. And to a certain degree, uh, there's probably a couple of different things that could be done. Number one, I would say if they're frustrated, first and foremost, remind yourself that what you see online is not necessarily real, right? So if there's frustration, stop and question whether or not, like, is this actually real? Is this how it's being portrayed? And maybe that can help with the frustration, because if you suddenly realize that somebody is creating this for clicks and to actually create outrage, is it fair to yourself as an individual to get caught up in the outrage that like creates turmoil internally because somebody else created a video that that's exactly what they wanted to do. They wanted to make you angry. That's kind of, in my mind, that's manipulative to people, and I don't think that's genuine and honest. But if they do want to reach out to us and express their frustration about the situation, if they do have questions about that, then they can go to I think it's complaints@bricksandminifigs.com.
Yeah.
So we do have an email address that people can submit their complaints about the situation. And obviously it's for people who are genuinely curious and want to know what has gone on, what's been happening, and is there something that's being done to rectify it.
Yeah. And I know this is such a he said, she said situation. So I want to avoid diving too deep into that. But in a very general sense, are the allegations being weighed against Bricks and Minifigs? Did those happen?
No. I can understand how it appears because of the way that the videos have been edited and cut together and made to look the way that they have been. But no, the allegations are not as they are being portrayed. And we feel very, very confident in our the filings that we've made with the court that will show through the evidence that we have that the allegations are all false, and that we would like for people to know, like what actually did happen.
Yeah. How much or how much oversight is there of a Bricks and Minifigs location from the corporate office?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it also is a unique one because it continues to evolve.
Yeah.
Right. There are some things that we can do and some things that we can't necessarily do. Some of it's related to like our current growth trend, and then some of it was related to just as we have grown, we've had to bring on new and different departments. But as it sits, we were, during this whole period of time, we had individuals who would, and this was right after COVID when we had transitioned to a lot of virtual visits to our stores. And so some of those virtual visits were still happening. The virtual visits are not as effective and useful as in-field and in-person visits. And so we up until that point, the virtual visits were still happening, though in 2025 those transitioned back to being in-field, in-person visits. And so the oversight comes through some of those visits, but obviously, as we can see, sometimes oversight does not catch everything. But when it comes to following the basic standards, making sure that the agreements that we have with our vendors and with others are being maintained, we're not, like, people aren't utilizing other people's IP and creating issues that way. We try and monitor as much as we can, but we're also human, right? Like, so mistakes can happen, things can slip through the cracks, and we just miss certain things, yeah, so as much as we try and make sure that the franchise rules that are established and put in place are being followed, and we're actually working diligently to ensure that more adherence and greater capacity to make sure observing of those standards are being met.
Yeah. So corporate kind of has a more compliance oversight than like day-to-day operations, is what you're
Correct.
saying.
Yes.
Okay.
So we establish certain rules that then they all are trained on, and then they are expected to maintain those rules and like through the training, and then everything else is then, like you said, the compliance and oversight after they've been fully trained on how to be running a compliant store.
Yeah. Yeah. And so this is all sort of based on the statement you put out last night. It's sort of all predicated on this consignment agreement, right? And your statement said that Bricks and Minifig doesn't allow for consignments in the operations manual. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Can you kind of explain what is consignment and then kind of how did that apply to this specific situation?
Yeah, well, consignment's a really interesting one. Consignment is there's probably a couple of different definitions that can go into consignment, but in fact, as has been attempted to be pointed out, we actually do in our franchise agreement, we reference consignment, but in the form of consignment services. Consignment services are different than consigned product. And so that's one thing to kind of also make sure that there's a differentiation between.
Yeah.
So a consignment service, and as it's written in the franchise agreement, specifically related to parties and events and other things, would be like if I was going to be holding, like knowing that I was going to have lots of birthday parties,
Yeah.
and I put, and I have a baker, like in the same strip mall, like 2 doors down,
Yeah.
who bakes birthday cakes. I can go to that baker and say, hey, Mr. Baker, I would love to have your cakes be the only cakes that we use in my birthday party room. So if you'll agree to bake the cakes and then provide them to all the people who have a birthday party, I'll just take 25% of the proceeds of the cake that you just baked and the customer paid for. That would be an example of a consigned service.
Okay.
But this particular section of the franchise agreement that's been flying around online, it specifically talks about products, and then it jumps into the services section and it says consignment services specifically related to parties, events, things along those lines, right? And so there's a big difference. But then as a part of all of the franchise agreements, and every franchise in existence has this dual side of things. There's the franchise agreement, and then there's the operations manual.
Yeah.
And the operations manual is kind of the living component to any franchise agreement.
Yeah.
Because as things change, guess what? All of our franchise agreements prior to COVID didn't have some of the same language in relation to how cleaning of product was to take place, because there were some elements, but not to the same extent that would have been needed for some of the cleaning, like that everyone felt was necessary during COVID.
Yeah.
But the only, like, we didn't have the ability, and legally speaking, it's not really permitted for us to go back into their franchise agreement, rewrite the whole thing on the fly, and then make everyone sign it all over again. And so incorporated as a part of the franchise agreement is the command, essentially, like through the franchise agreement, to follow the operations manual. And so in the operations manual, and has been since I believe we became franchisees, it clearly states that the consignment of product, pawning of product, those types of things are not permitted. We buy product from people and then we sell the product. And so hopefully that clears up some of the confusion between those.
Yeah.
But I also understand how not everybody's going to understand the legalese behind consignment services versus consigned product.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, to be blunt, I didn't know. I didn't catch that myself. Yeah. Can you talk more about the relationship between the original agreement, the franchise disclosure agreement, and the operations manual? For example, if something in the operation manual would contradict the disclosure agreement, which one would kind of be upheld? Because from what I'm seeing is like people are saying, well, it says this in the agreement, but in the operation manuals, Bricks and Minifig says it did this. So I'm just trying to understand kind of what I guess the courts would adhere to.
Yeah, sure. So there's a couple of different things at play there, and I guess first of all, to clarify, I know there's often a confusion between a franchise disclosure document, a franchise agreement, and then the operations manual.
Sure.
So a disclosure document is actually just a structured document that then is regulated federally and then state by state,
Mm.
depending on the situation. And that's just
Yeah.
a document that's used to help kind of take the franchise agreement and turn it into layman's language. But in attempting to do so, it just creates another big, legal document. But
Sure.
it's its own thing there. But and when you're talking about the franchise agreement and then the operations manual, so
Yeah.
in reality, the franchise agreement and then also has certain carve-outs that indicate that unless it violates like a state law or anything else, that the operations manual, as incorporated herein to the franchise agreement, essentially consists of new directives from the franchisor, which then need to be followed.
Yeah.
So again, in the agreements are meant to be like read on their face value, and so if something is not specifically written into an agreement, such as specific cleaning instructions during COVID,
Yeah.
well, then where do they look to for direction from the franchisor? And that's through the operations manual. And so the language of the franchise agreement essentially pushes and says you are to follow all directives written verbally, also this, that, and the other, as given by the franchisor. And by so doing, then you are in compliance with this aspect of the franchise agreement. But that also includes, and it talks about any other of these documents, including like the operations manual. So
Gotcha.
the franchise agreement is the framework and kind of like the skeleton, and it has some like meat on the bones of that. But then the operations manual kind of really becomes the meat on the bones when it comes to the day-to-day operations
Sure.
of a store.
Gotcha. Understood. So from your perspective, what happened in 2024? How did we get here?
Yeah, how did we get here? To be very high level and brief, we had a franchisee who had begun defaulting on payments to multiple parties, ourselves included, and then whose significant other received work overseas, and they decided that they weren't going to be able to continue on with the store. Reached out to us, let us know that. We then made arrangements with them to transition the store, and we believed everything was going to go smoothly. It did not, and in that not smooth transition, there was like a mention of consignment that we just really didn't know what was being talked about. But we just essentially said, look, whatever there is, we're going to try and unravel and figure out. But at this point, we need to. For the safety of the store and so that nothing gets damaged or anything otherwise, we're just asking to leave. So, and then it was over the course of the next couple of days that then this alleged consignment agreement kind of came to our knowledge. And so then we started trying to unravel what was going on with this, what was meant. We still didn't have access to most of the records that were left behind. It was in a position and a state that we were having a difficult time reconciling anything that was being told to us at that time. So we asked for additional documentation, and it took a while to get some of that documentation. During that period of time, there was a lot of frustration, which I would say is reasonable to be frustrated. But we also kept saying like, hey, we think that this is related to like the former franchisee. I think you need to reach out to them to see what needs to be done to help take care of this, because when we came in, we conducted a full inventory of the store, and there was nowhere near the amount of inventory in the entire store, let alone the amounts being thrown at us for the amounts that they were talking about, specifically for a very specific type of Lego, right?
Yeah.
And so the two just didn't reconcile, and so we kept saying, hey, I think you need to just go talk to the former franchisee. Either they have the stuff or they've sold it all, and you just need to collect the money off of them. And they kept coming back saying like, well, they told us that it's your responsibility now. And so that's kind of where the back and forth has kind of continued to go, is because we weren't, first of all, the franchise agreement doesn't allow for consignment agreements for product. Second of all, the alleged agreement, when we finally got to see the content of it, it was signed for by Crystal, the former franchisee, and this family. And so we said, oh, okay, so yeah, like you need to go and talk to her and see what's going on. And they said, no, like we're just going to keep saying that you have to have it. And that's where a lot of the problems came in. So we told them, hey, if you still don't have any other resolution, like we're happy to work with, if you've got an attorney, we can talk to them. So they actually did have an attorney send information to us. We said, great, appreciate this. Here's our attorney. Can you please talk with them and let's see what we can do to work this out.
Yeah.
And then we never heard back.
Mm.
And then the next thing we know is, like there's a larger campaign that started happening to try and put pressure on us to just give money over on a situation that we still didn't even have the full inventory, through the point of sale system reconciled to what was in the store versus anything else. So, and what made it very clear is on one of the podcasts after the fact that the parties went on to, ended up indicating that, and then we went and looked and verified for ourselves, they actually moved all of the inventory off-site after an initial showing or something like that, after a particular weekend. They moved all the inventory off-site. And then as we did get access to more and more of the documentation, the point of sale receipts, some of these other things, a significantly more higher percentage of the inventory that was claimed to be owed had actually sold already and wasn't reported. And so there was some of these types of things. And so the entire time we were saying, hey, we want to help, and we still do. We are still willing to try and help. The biggest issue is we just have to have people who are willing to sit down, look at the records, understand what's really gone on, so that we can try and identify, did something go missing? Did somebody else take it? Was there something else? But it wasn't in the store when we took over. And that's really kind of the crux of it. So the claims that we stole this inventory are just completely false. We never had the inventory in the first place to steal. And, even after the fact, as some of the additional frustrations were happening, those that were then operating the store reached out and said, hey, we understand you're frustrated. We're frustrated by this situation too. If we just give you a bunch of inventory that we do have in store, it's nowhere near what you're claiming, but this is all we ever had. Would you be willing to just take this? And the answer was no. And that's where, some of the real frustration has come in, is it appears that this is not necessarily it just appears that there's kind of some, coming to a head on some things, and we've been trying to be reasonable in this situation and say hey, can we please get some documentation? And if we can, let's work through attorneys. Let's try and find a way of making whoever it is whole however we can through the right parties. And if we can do that, then we're great. We can really make something happen, and we can get back to doing exactly what everyone wants to do: spread the love of Lego.
So, what do you think is kind of the motive behind this, if what you're saying is what is happening?
Yeah, that's a tough thing. I can't ascribe anybody else's motive. On one hand, the conduct, I would say, kind of speaks for itself to a certain degree. But I'm going to let, I think other people allow that to take place. I'll probably just say, through the court system, I think we'll either be able to identify some motive or otherwise, but I'm not going to try and ascribe motive to anybody.
Sure. I wanted to zoom in a bit on something you said about Crystal defaulting, because this is another one of those things where it seems like you're saying one thing, Crystal's claim is saying a different thing. For people who maybe aren't financially minded, what is a default? How do you pay it or not pay it? What happened?
Sure. Yeah, no problem. I mean, so it's very, very similar to buying a car, right? So if I go and I buy a car, and but I don't have all the cash that I need to buy a car, and the car, costs money to maintain, and I suddenly I get the car and I get the keys and I drive away, and then let's say a couple months later, I just stop making payments on the car, and I actually stop putting fuel in the car and doing some of those things. Well, first of all, the car's not going to run, or not going to run very well. And then eventually the bank who I got a loan for and made a down payment to is going to come and say, hey, you've stopped payments on this car. We're going to repossess the car. And then they're going to be like, oh, well, the car didn't even work. You didn't teach me how to drive, first of all. And well, okay, well, it's not our job to teach you how to drive, but but like they're going to take the car and they're going to and that's not going to feel fair. And I get that. I totally understand that. But the reality is, like that's kind of what happens if you decide to buy something. So in this situation, there are two agreements at play. One would be an asset purchase agreement, which was entered into by that particular franchisee. And after the initial down payment, no additional payments were made on the purchase of the assets of the store. Second was then the franchise agreement, which then, based on the operations of the store, a requirement to pay monthly royalties was in place. And after a number of months where payments were being made, those payments stopped. We would send notices and let them know that, hey, we're missing this payment. Can we get caught up? Can we do some different things? Do you need accommodations? And so as we went back and forth on those things to try and help wherever we could, we then also received notice from the landlord that rent had not been paid for several months. And so in order to not allow the store to be lost to the landlord needing to collect on some of those things, BAM Corporate stepped in and paid the rent multiple times. And so there was quite a bit that had gone on that then showed that eventually, like when it was time to move on, we had multiple instances of defaults that to the franchise agreement that were uncured and that needed to be resolved, and it like gave us the right to just move forward. Now, our initial offer was, hey, at this point, we understand that you're moving out of the country, and we don't want and at that point there was a significant amount of money that was owed to the franchise. We said, hey, and normally, sorry, I know I keep going back and forth. Normally, in a situation, if corporate was going to be taking over, we have an obligation to buy the assets of the store back. But in this situation, because they had never finished paying for the asset purchase agreement in the first place, we actually didn't have to. But we still said, hey, if there is something owing, or like if the value of the inside of the store is more than the remainder of the asset purchase agreement and the amount of royalties owed to us and other things owed to us, then we'll still pay you whatever balance is left over for the reacquisition of your store. But because it was double, six-figure digits almost, like it was pretty high up there. And when we got in there, the value of the store was anywhere between 30 to 40,000, and there was no way that any of that amount would swallow up what was owed to us, both in the asset purchase agreement and the franchise agreement itself, the royalties.
Yeah. So let me just make sure I got you here. You're saying from when Crystal and her husband took ownership of the store, or maybe not ownership, they became franchisees, they were never paying the lease off?
No, they initially started paying the lease.
But they stopped after a few months.
Yep. After a certain period of time, those payments stopped. Or like they were sporadic. It wasn't to say, I don't think it was all stopped all at one time. I think, but there were multiple months where we had to step in and make payments, and then a period of time where they made their payments again, and then another series of times. And I do believe at the very end we did have to cover quite a number of months of the landlord's rent in order to not lose the space.
Who is the landlord? Can you share that?
Honestly, I don't know. It's changed a couple of times over the past couple of years, to my knowledge, so I don't know.
Well, I did want to ask because I've been reading over this FDD, as most of the internet has, and it does say that this location is owned and operated by an entity owned by Bricks and Minifigs Franchising.
I'm sorry, what are you referring to?
This is the 2023 financial, the FDD. It says it gives a list of outlets owned and operated by corporate and or one or more of our officers. It lists Crystal's name here as the location on River Road in Kaiser, Oregon, owned and operated by an entity owned by Bricks and Minifigs Franchising, Inc.
Right. So that particular, and remember, the FDDs are disclosure documents. Those aren't the agreements. So every year we have, we have to file what's called a franchise disclosure document that tells the various states what had happened the previous year. So so Crystal, when she bought the store in 2023, she bought an asset that had been owned by BAM Franchising in 2022. It's the 2022 information that's being published in the 2023 FDDs. Does that help make sense?
Yeah.
And Crystal was the manager of the store at that time.
Gotcha. So
which is why she was listed there in that capacity, because she was the manager of a corporate store. She then approached us and said, hey, I'd like to buy this store in like early 2023. And we said, sure, that'd be great. And so as of, I believe, February or March of 2023, she had entered into that asset purchase agreement and then signed her own franchise agreement. So that's why, and those numbers would not have been published, like in 2022 for, like those types of things.
Gotcha. So one other thing that just caught my eye as I was reading over this, because obviously Crystal is claiming wrongful termination. And as I'm looking through this, the reasons you can terminate someone as outlined in this agreement, something that caught my eye is it says you can immediately terminate someone if they don't pay for any reason. You could just immediately terminate them. But then later down, it says under the notice of termination, essentially the same thing. So I guess what has confused to me is what happened here. Was it an immediate termination? Was it a notice of termination?
Well, immediate termination and notice of termination. I think I would have to understand exactly which section you're referring to in the
absolutely.
franchise agreement.
So this is the 2023 Franchising Area Development Agreement, assumedly the one that Crystal signed. This is section...
No. So area developer agreements are a separate thing. So she would not have been under an area developer agreement. They can be similar, but they're not the same thing. So you're still looking at the FDDs that have a copy of the franchise agreement and the area developer agreement. So you're probably looking in a subsequent agreement that's just attached as like an attachment or addendum to the FDD.
I understand.
But so further up in the documentation is where you would find the full franchise agreement. Yeah. It's going to be very similar, but not all the same. So that's also something to be aware of. When you're looking at some of these things, there's a lot of nuance that goes into it. The actual franchise agreement she would have been sent doesn't have the FDD stuff at the very beginning, nor does it have anything to do with area developer agreements.
Understood. Gotcha. So I guess in this case, was the termination, was it immediate? Was it noticed in Crystal's case?
So the original intent and the conversations that we had with her prior to the transition date was to make it a mutual termination, which is to say that she was going to be moving out of the country and she was no longer desired to operate the store. Therefore, because of the unpaid balances and otherwise, corporate was going to come back in and repossess the store based on the asset purchase agreement, but also the missing royalties. However, we were going to do so in good faith together, reasonably and mutually.
Gotcha.
And that's just that was our I guess at our discretion, that we wanted to be, like kind and like move forward and just be like, hey, we're not going to come after you for the amount of money that you owe to us. If we can all just work together and be reasonable through this whole process. So the nearly $200,000 that's owed to us, we're just going to eat that cost. Some of it will go into the, like the repossession of the store and the repurchase of the assets of the store, but otherwise. Yeah. Unfortunately, when we arrived, the transition ended up not going smooth, and there was, I think, just heightened emotions around the situation, and it became very antagonistic, and came to the point where we just felt like it was not going to go as smoothly as we thought it was going to. Therefore, we ended up having to send a notice of immediate termination. Gotcha. That same night, which we could have and should have done early, or could have done earlier, and we didn't. But we ended up having to do it, that night.
Understood. Let me correct myself. You're right. I was looking at the area developer agreement. So now I am on. They are very similar. I'm on the 2023 franchise agreement. Under immediate termination, it says, let me see, where is it? Failure to make payments, immediate termination. Yet later down under notice of termination, it says failure to make payment of any amount. So I guess my confusion is sort of the incongruity there between, it feels like the same thing can be immediately terminated and terminated with notice.
Right. So there's a couple of different things. Number one, just because we send a notice does not mean that we are, like, so if there's a terminatable offense that we can go after or take action on, is not negated by the fact that if we chose to send a notice instead of immediate termination, that still doesn't negate the fact that we actually still can immediately terminate.
Sure.
So there's plenty of things that we can send you notice on, but and obviously in some of those types of situations, I'd also just make sure that, whenever we have something, we always send it to our franchise attorney to be like, hey, what are the steps here? And our franchise attorneys were 100% on board with everything. And they were the ones that helped us proceed with how we operated. But yeah, so like,
Sure.
hopefully that answers your question.
Yes,
there.
that does. Yeah, thank you. My last question here is, in the statement last night, you mentioned when Bricks and Minifigs Corporate repossessed the store due to the former owner's financial defaults and other breaches. Obviously, we've covered the defaults. What were the other breaches?
It's a fair question. And what I don't want to do is I don't want to get into too much that would be, I would say, damaging to any other party. But I'll speak in generalities. Not maintaining standards of the store, not paying other vendors when payments are due, generally being in default in other aspects of the franchise agreement or the operations manual. Those are some of the breaches that could have and would have been probably referenced in that breach notice. Some of the things that had been observed, but like I don't remember every specific particular breach.
Sure, but you're saying it was more than just the defaults.
Correct. I mean, like, so even just the default through non-payment of royalties is one thing, but non-payment on the asset purchase agreement, that's another breach in and of itself, independent. Not paying the landlord rent, those are breaches in and of themselves, and independent. Not paying vendors, like for inventory, that is, like some of those types of things. Yeah. So every one of those are all considered breaches, just depending on the severity of the breach, would then fall in line with other things. So, yeah.
Understood. Cool. Well, there's a lot of, we'll just say, vitriol going around the internet right now, directed at Bricks and Minifigs. I guess, what do you have to say to people who are so angry at you and your company?
Yeah, what I would say is it's understandable how people can be angry, because they've seen a very compelling video that tells a very specific story, right? And that story is, I'm a monster. That story is that Bricks and Minifigs is nothing but greed. But if you were to actually ask the majority of the franchisees, the communities that we serve, the people that we work with, the ones that are also behind on their royalties or having a hard time making rent, and we step in and we pay and we do those things, not because we're looking for another gotcha, but because we genuinely care about the business owners and the communities that they serve. That's what I would say, is that not only that we shouldn't be doing anything, none of our stores should be doing anything that could potentially harm anybody in their communities. And so if there is something that's gone wrong, like in the situation with the Mansell family, if something has gone wrong, we still stand by our desire to make things right, and we want to help where we can and how we can, but we have to do it the right way. And when we work together, we can make a lot of really cool things happen. And so that to me is the community base, as well as the community structure that's built on that base that makes Bricks and Minifigs fantastic. And so what I would say is, question, like the motives that other people have for why they put out negative content. What do they get for it? And oftentimes it's for monetary gain. Well, what would we ever get by taking somebody's product? Nothing but like problems. And so in reality, the two don't really match up. They so in reality, like I would say, understand where what motivations are coming from. And if you kind of look at that, you'll recognize that what we're saying and what we've put to the courts is None of this happened. None of it is as the way it was portrayed, and the inventory was not in the store when we took over the store. And whatever could be identified that might have matched the list that was eventually provided to us was attempted to be given to the family, and it was refused. And I think that what we're trying to do now is to say we still want to help recover any lost items wherever we can and however we can. Like if there's a way for us to help make him whole through finding out where like the sets went and if they were like otherwise like disposed of, we can try and work through that process to help him recover whatever we can help him recover.
So you're saying your door's open if Brian wants to reach out?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I would say I think what could help, at least with kind of the things I've been curious about, is I would love to see at least the segment of the operations manual that covers consignment, both the current version and the 2023 version, just to compare. I would also I know Crystal told me earlier today she was sounded like there was a lawsuit filed against her. So I would love to get a copy of that claim if possible.
A lawsuit filed against her?
That's what I heard. Is that not?
No, not to our knowledge, not as of yet. So.
Okay, understood. Well, I'll keep digging in on that. And the other thing that would be good is there was also a temporary restraining order, I heard. Can you speak to that at all against Crystal?
Well, I think there are probably some confusion and misunderstanding on some parties' part about what certain things happen.
Sure.
A temporary restraining order, which is preliminary to an injunction, is filed or has been filed against those who have participated in the fictitious videos that have been created and published. So that has been filed, and as well as a claim against those who have done all those things. So to the extent that individuals are named as either participants and so forth, that participated in certain activities, they may be listed as participants in some of those actions, but we would just recommend people read the documents themselves.
So there have been actions filed.
Yeah, there have been actions.
Can you speak to who they've been filed against?
I would just point to the documents themselves. They're filed with the Fourth Judicial Court of Utah.
Great. All right. Well, thank you. That was all I got. Is there anything else we didn't cover? I know we jumped around a lot.
Let's see. Well, I guess from my side of things, I would say, I still love this brand. I still love the community that has shown lots of support and who continues to show up day in and day out for each other as well as for our store owners. We have kids who are constantly coming to our stores. There's a great example of a young man who wrote a letter to one of the store owners and let them know, thank you for being my happy place, because that's what this brand is all about. The brand is there to support communities. It's there to support children and grandparents and families to help share in their love of this, this community and the product and how the product can bring people together. And so when we look at the community engagement, the activities, the school fundraisers, all the good things that the brand does in the community, and all of those things help us continue to stay strong, knowing how much the community supports us, the brand, and how much good I believe that our brands do in the community. And so I'm thrilled to have been part of that journey up to this point, and I'm thrilled to be able to continue to be part of that journey. So that we can continue to find ways of bringing more and more joy into the world through all things Lego.
Great. All right. Well, I'll end it there. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right.